Do you ever feel like you're screaming into an abyss?
Residents with hoses defending their homes.
Up to 5 feet of storm surge poured into Miami's downtown business district.
8:21 here on the air. We're experiencing very strong shaking.
Wow.
I think we need to get under the desk.
All right, we're going to go to break. We'll be right back after this. Wow.
Well, you're not the only one.
My friends, you know me to be neither rash nor impulsive. I'm not given to wild, unsupported statements. And I tell you that we must evacuate this planet immediately.
Jor-El may have been ignored by Krypton's council, but his predictions were still correct. Sure of himself, he continued his work and did everything possible to save his infant son, Kal-El, from impending doom. We all know Superman's origin story. A young child was discovered by Martha and Jonathan Kent in Smallville, Kansas, and lived a normal life before developing superpowers. Thanks to the loving, empathetic treatment he received as a kid, he instinctively uses his abilities to protect his new homeworld and help others whenever he can. Entire books can be written about the symbolism of his place on Earth. I mean, Superman is a literal alien who was forced to flee his home due to circumstances far beyond his control and settle in a new place. Created by the sons of Jewish immigrants, Superman is heavily influenced by Jerry Siegel and Joel Shuster's humanist beliefs, but there's a certain angle of this conversation that I feel like is missing. Even the International Rescue Committee has commented on Superman's status as a refugee, but the fact that he is specifically a climate refugee often feels overlooked. With climate change intensifying, the number of people who will be displaced from their homes due to environmental factors is projected to skyrocket. As of World Refugee Day in 2019, the UN estimated there were 70.8 million people forcibly displaced from their homes, and nearly 26 million of them were refugees forced to leave their country. Now that the UN is projecting climate migrant numbers specifically will reach anywhere from 25 million to 1 billion people by 2050, this aspect of the character feels more pressing than ever before. Krypton's destruction was originally pretty vague, but most explanations include the planet's core slowly destabilizing. When John Byrne took over the Man of Steel in 1986, the year President Reagan finally mentioned AIDS for the first time, he made things even worse by including a young Jor-El discovering thousands of Kryptonians dying from what he termed the Green Plague. That's right, folks. People were dying for what felt like no reason, and then, to make matters even worse, the whole planet blew up. This pandemic was literally caused by the planet's core transforming into an unstable substance that kills its inhabitants. Something I think we can all relate to as the world burns outside our quarantine bunkers. In 2013, when Zack Snyder released his Byrne-influenced take of the character on the big screen, he updated Krypton's demise once again by linking it directly to the planet's self-destructive energy policies.
Harvesting the core was suicide. It has accelerated the process of implosion.
Our energy reserves were exhausted. What would you have us do, Al?
Look to the stars.
In order to meet their needs, Krypton's council decided to drill into the already destabilized planet, rather than consider any alternative forms of energy like Jor-El suggests. At the same time on Earth, experts were screaming about the urgent need to combat climate change, but even President Obama was hyping up fracking, an oil extraction technique where heavy drilling often results in the contamination of nearby water sources. It seems like no matter how loudly people shout about the risks of climate change, certain individuals in power will always consider short-term gains over the planet's long-term well-being.
This discussion is terminated. The decision of the Council is final.
Superman loves a good dramatic speech, but he also has a long list of heroic actions that demonstrates his humanistic values. Dating back to 1949, DC Comics had a partnership with the National Social Welfare Assembly so their characters could appear in pro-civic society strips, promoting things like good sportsmanship and going to the library. As the publisher's most famous refugee, many of Superman's appearances also had him directly commenting on the importance of helping people around the world and spreading empathy. In one strip, he took prejudiced kids to a foreign country so they could see the conditions their new immigrant neighbor left behind. Another sees him promote donating to UNICEF as he flies 2 kids around the world to show off all the good work the organization does. No matter how many years go by or how the character's actions evolve to better combat the world's evils, it's clear that Superman wants to help people feel more comfortable and secure in their lives. Examining the character under this climate refugee angle also illuminates why Superman is such a proud conservationist. Sure, Clark is a farm boy who grew up caring for animals, but the fact that he cares for so many alien creatures, even predatorial ones, in the Fortress of Solitude, illustrates that he thinks all life forms deserve comfortable lives. He's not out there exploiting animals for profit like Joe Exotic. Superman truly wants to protect other life forms from feeling the same sense of loss that he endured. It's not just the people of Earth who are worthy of protection. Superman does whatever he can, even setting his brigade of robot caretakers to carefully monitor his sanctuaries, to protect any organisms that are at risk from dangers far beyond their control. The idea that WB is allegedly struggling to make the character relevant for modern audiences is a shame. The Variety article that first expressed this perspective includes a paragraph mentioning the fact that Superman went through 2 film reboots in 13 years, and also starred in 2 vastly different television programs, and yet the studio considers their efforts a failure. Instead of recognizing how moldable and universal the character and his experiences are, let alone the fact that he carried profitable projects from various genres, the studio is actively ignoring the most prescient aspects of the character. Yeah, there are 2 distinct scenes where Superman helps limit environmental damage from oil spills in the middle of the ocean, but they're merely moments of excitement to showcase the hero in action, rather than representations of what the character should be fighting for. When the character was first created, the Dust Bowl had just finished ravaging people's lives across the Midwest, and now we see increasingly intense fire and hurricane seasons, leaving more people houseless and unsure of what's next every year. As we sleepwalk towards climate suicide, Jor-El's ignored pleas about the destruction of Krypton are more relevant than ever, and yet WB hesitates to tap into this environmentally charged side of the character. Scientists have been warning us for decades about the biggest risk facing mankind, but the general audience still hasn't seen Superman do a damn thing about it. The Man of Tomorrow and the emblem on his chest are symbols of hope. He inspires us to be better, to lift each other up and imagine a better future. But he also represents an important lesson we must learn in order to face that future together. Climate change must be taken seriously. Maybe Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk can afford to send their families into the cosmos once things disintegrate here on Earth, but the rest of us need to do everything we can now to keep this planet inhabitable. Superman might be strong, but he can't punch the ice caps back to normal or force governments to adopt solar energy. So it's on us to follow his example and fight to save our home from environmental catastrophe.